Hey, Dr. Mike here. The foundation for addiction recovery is nutrition, but what kind? Stay tuned to learn more with Christina Vaslock, founder of the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition.
You're listening to Live Foreverish, a show dedicated to helping you live just a little longer. Here's your hosts, Dr. Mike and Dr. Crystal Gossard.
All right, welcome to Live Foreverish. Addiction recovery is a very serious issue, you know, especially over the past few years, Dr. Crystal, coming out of the COVID pandemic. We've already, I've seen the stats, alcoholism, drug use, all up in mostly the adults. So it's definitely something that's always important, but I think even more so now. And I'm glad that Christina Vaslock can join us today. She's the founder and director of the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition. She also has a nonprofit organization, Eating Protein Saves Lives. Dr. Vaslock, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
So, you know, I want to start. I think the audience always likes to get an idea of, you know, what's the story behind the guests? Like, why are they studying what they study? People like that story, that background. So tell us how you got started on addiction therapy, specifically with nutrition.
Well, how I got started with addiction therapy is a very difficult time when I was 16, actually. I ended up at a boarding school in England surrounded by teenagers who had very, very serious drug and alcohol issues. And I tried very hard to help my roommate, and it failed. And she ended up dying of addiction. And something about that experience made me, I didn't think I knew it at the time, but made me want to focus my entire life's work on finding effective ways of helping people overcome addiction and finding the missing pieces, both in each individual's life, but in the field as a whole. And I think that I've done that.
So was that experience what made you decided to be a psychotherapist? You've been in the field for 30 years now as a licensed psychotherapist. Do you think that's what drove you into that field? And did you always focus on addiction, or were you kind of general family counseling?
Well, it's so funny, Crystal, because I think that experience when I was a teenager was so traumatic that when I finally made it into and through school as a counselor, as a psychotherapist, which I really liked, and I started out as a marriage and family therapist, maybe to fix my own family, as we all do. I was determined to have nothing to do with addiction.
Interesting.
Wow.
I got you.
People with
Okay.
addiction were those scary people over there. I had failed once, and I was going to do anything and everything but addiction. Okay?
Oh,
So I
wow.
didn't do any classes in school about addiction. I avoided it, like a hot potato.
So it was like a personal trauma that you were probably hadn't quite dealt with.
Sounds like it.
Exactly. I had
Yeah.
not dealt with it. So I graduate from school and I'm looking for work and I'm looking for work and I'm looking for work and nothing's popping. And there's this ad in the newspaper, way back then we had newspaper ads. And it and I stared at each other for 4 months. Okay. The ad said floor staff at residential treatment program for court ordered alcoholic boys.
Mm.
Very
It's
interesting.
like, oh my God, here I am a teenager again. It's like, no,
Ah.
Wow.
absolutely not ever, no way. Okay. So this ad and I stared at each other for 4 months until I got hungry enough to
Yeah,
pick up the phone and
that's great.
call.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. Yeah. Well,
And they hired me, and it turned out that I loved addiction.
Wow.
Listen. Often the best things we do are there's a personal story behind them, right? A
Right.
personal experience that drives us, motivates us,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's in a way, you turn something tragic into something that's really good because you're helping so many people. But I guess, but you were a therapist. How did it turn into focusing more on nutrition though? Because there's behavioral modification, there's drugs. Or how did you go down the nutrition line?
Well, that's another personal story. So I was depressed my whole life. Okay. And some of the depression was due to trauma, certainly. But it turned out that I had 8 different biochemical or nutritional underpinnings to my depression. And the first one I discovered when I was a junior in college, and that is that eggs actually made me more depressed. Every time I ate an egg, my depression got worse.
Interesting.
Wow.
And if I stayed away from eggs, my depression was better. Not gone, but better. And so through the years, I discovered, more and more of these, as I said, 8 layers of things that were contributing to my depression. And so it was that experience that was one of the things that made me really passionate about this. But it was also just watching my clients
Mm.
and noticing that the ones that came in having eaten real food before the session participated so much more effectively in either the group or the individual session. And then there were those who were just all over the place. And I just happened to ask, hey, have you eaten today? And they say, no. And I started feeding them. And within 10 minutes, they could focus and they could engage and they could do therapeutic work. And that was such a powerful experience for me that just feeding people in the session could change what they accomplished in that 1 hour.
Wow. So you started incorporating food
Yeah.
into the
Well,
sessions. This is
Well, it's great, but as a clinician, I'm trying to figure out the connection between eggs and depression now.
maybe the choline. I don't know.
I'm not
That's it.
sure. I mean, I'm not sure, but I'm gonna have to look that. But that's your personal
Allergy.
experience. Yeah,
Right.
that's great. Yeah.
So Dr. Mike, it was actually an article in Prevention Magazine in 1976 that talked about the top 5 allergens in the country and
Mm.
how they contribute to mental health disorders. And
Well,
it was one of those God things that got me to this article.
Mm.
And it said for susceptible people, eggs can cause depression.
yeah, yeah. No, it makes it because I'm actually an immunologist. My original degree, and I was thinking it's something. It's probably more on the allergy side than it is any of the
Uh-huh.
steroids that you might find in eggs, because eggs do have steroids. I mean, they're trying to grow a baby chick.
Right.
So that's really interesting. So your connection between addiction, so your connection to addiction is personal, and your connection to addiction and nutrition is personal as well. And so you're incorporating all that in. That's great.
I think it's fantastic. And so now you're feeding your patients or your clients. And
Sounds good.
and then I would imagine you decided to just take it to the next level. And what did that next level look like? Like, how did you get from that to now your nonprofit organization and bringing in, I'm sure, more aspects of nutrition?
Okay. So let's go back to just around 1990. As I said, I'd been depressed my whole life. I'd also been ill. And I was working in the addiction field. I had a private practice as a counselor. I was getting really interested in nutrition. I'd studied Western herbal medicine, and I saw this press release about this new treatment program in the Bay Area that was beginning to use amino acids for addiction recovery. And I thought, well, that's really, really cool. I went and met them, loved the nutritionist. The nutritionist figured out what was wrong with me. But in the process, I started learning about amino acids and their power to restoring neurotransmitter function in
Mhm.
people both with addiction, but just mental health issues. So, depression, anxiety, insomnia, irritability, all of these things can be symptoms of low neurotransmitter function, which are the brain
Yeah.
chemicals that mediate mood. And that if you take an amino acid that you can buy from your local vitamin store or Amazon, it can actually it can actually rebuild your neurotransmitters within 20 minutes, turn off a craving, turn off your anxiety, give you energy, settle you down, or help you sleep, depending upon which amino acid you use. Well, this is a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I went and got the training I needed. And since then, really specialized in nutrition for mental health and addiction recovery, because very, very few other nutritionists were doing this. And it was my passion. And then I realized, around 2015 that I knew enough that I could start teaching other people. And that's when I started my school, which teaches practitioners this whole approach. We call it the third leg of the stool. That in addiction recovery and mental health recovery, you know, um, it has the biochemical, the brain elements to it, the psychosocial elements like trauma and needing to build social skills, etc. The spiritual element to it. But the problem is the brain. No, everybody's ignoring the brain other than throwing medication at it.
Yeah.
I want to feed it. I want to give it what it
Makes sense.
needs to function optimally.
It makes sense. So that I was going to ask that. So this was a clinic you discovered, and you said 1990 or 1990. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure maybe there were a couple other clinics doing that, but how widespread is that today? I mean, is that a common thing that if somebody is in recovery, they're going to go in and get some amino acids plus a drug, or I mean, how does that work? Or no?
No, somehow we have not managed as a community to get this word out into the world. And it breaks my heart because 100,000 people died last year of drug overdose alone.
Yeah.
And that's not okay.
Wow.
And it's not okay that medication is the only tool that is being promoted to feed the brain, to address the biochemistry of addiction and mental health issues.
Yeah.
It's not okay because what's being ignored is the fact that we know what the brain needs to function optimally. We know this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very simple. The solution is actually as close as our kitchen table.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, awesome stuff. I guess so. There's addiction recovery, right?
Right.
And then there's those that are just trying to maintain sobriety. Is the amino acid therapy for just the recovery phase, or is this something you'd continue throughout somebody's, just journey now in life?
It depends. It depends. It depends on a whole lot of things. Some people just need to be on amino acids for the short term, 8 to 10 to 12 months. And then they've rebuilt their neurotransmitters, they're eating well, their stress is manageable, and their bodies can maintain their own neurotransmitter levels just from food. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Other people, there are those of us who weren't quite so lucky. And I personally needed to be on amino acids for a good 10 years before I stabilized
Okay.
enough that I didn't need them anymore.
Gotcha.
Ideally, we want to start and end with food, but the purified, I think of amino acids and like fish oil and stuff as purified food. They
Yeah.
kind of come in the middle.
Yeah. Listen, as a clinician, I don't mind people taking purified amino acids, omega
Right.
oils for every day all their life.
Yeah, and so that was my question. Do you focus in on just protein intake, protein quality, and then you sprinkle in the isolated amino acids? Is that kind of the approach?
Yes. Now, we may need the amino acids to jumpstart the system because they start working within 20 minutes.
Okay.
Um, and of course, you need the vitamins and minerals as well. So we want to incorporate that into the diet. But, we can also jumpstart the system using a good multivitamin and using fish oil or flaxseed oil to get those all essential omega 3s in there. I find that the omega 3 fatty acids can decrease depression within 3 days. It's like the sun coming out
Yeah.
when you
Wow.
Yeah.
get the right dose and good quality omega 3 supplement. So we actually use a assessment tool where the symptoms have been correlated with neurotransmitter deficiency, so we know exactly what the symptoms are. And we just ask people to rate themselves on a scale of 0 to 10. And that's what guides our dosing of the amino acids. And then over time, you watch those numbers drop, 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 drop as people, get better.
Now,
It's really quite remarkable.
are you finding that are you still incorporating prescription medication along with the amino acid therapy, or are the people who are coming to you, are they people who they just have had it with the
The
conventional?
yeah.
Both. I have a lot of people coming to me and a lot of students who are on psychotropic medication. Sometimes it's working, oftentimes it's actually not working. And what's so nice is that when people are ready, especially when the drugs aren't working, they can wean themselves slowly off them and move on to the amino acids. Because you see, all the meds do is they just tweak the brain, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They don't feed the brain. They don't rebuild those neurotransmitter systems. They don't provide the brain with the raw material it needs to function optimally. Okay, so here's my motto. My motto is it's our brain's job to allow us to cope with stress gracefully.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah.
lovely?
Yeah.
That is,
Gracefully. But to do that, it needs to be fed optimally.
Yeah. I like the model because it takes pressure off. Like it's not, I think we have such I have to feel perfect, be perfect, do all perfect things in my life. And that's not that's unreasonable. And to
Yeah.
think that I need to I have anxiety, I want to get to a point where I have no anxiety.
right.
That's not life. And so I like kind of your motto. Instead, it's coping, it's working with that. And I think it gives people more hope.
Yes.
Right? It realigns kind of their perspective. You're listening to Christina Veslok. She's the founder and director of the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition. She's also the founder of the nonprofit Eating Protein Saves Lives. Dr. Veslok, to kind of summarize everything, wrap up our conversation, what would you ultimately like our listeners to know about addiction and nutrition?
There's hope. Bringing nutrition in as the third leg of the stool can be a game changer. And we have started an online recovery meeting called Feeding Recovery Network that you can join to get support and information about how to actually do this in your own recovery journey.
Very nice. Feedingrecovery.com.
Network. Well, so it's through the Eating Protein Saves Lives website. Just go to
Okay.
that website and you'll see it right there.
Okay, so yeah, we have two websites our audience might be interested in. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about Christina Veslok and what she does, her organization, that's aminoacidtherapy.com and eatingproteinsaveslives.org. So go ahead and check both of those out. Dr. Veslok, fascinating experiences, fascinating story. I love the way you allow your experiences to drive motivation, direction, and helping others. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on today. You're listening to Live Foreverish. Don't forget, you go to liveforeverish.com. Dr. Crystal, we have close to 400 podcasts now.
I know. We've been busy.
We might be, I don't really know where the number is, to be honest with you, but there's a bunch there you can go and download and share, comment, and of course subscribe so you never miss a show. LiveForeverish.com. It's the 1-2 punch. Give your email to join the family. You'll get some really cool newsletters from us, and then also you can subscribe to your favorite place that you listen to downloads. That's LiveForeverish.com. I'm Dr. Mike. Thanks for listening.